Hello, this is Tom Britt. West Tennessee PBS is working hard to bring you more local shows and quality PBS programs. And they need your financial help because they don't run commercials, they rely on your support. It's easy to donate. Go to their website, westtnpbs.org, and click on the Donate tab. Your donations to Channel 11 stay local and help WLJT-TV continue their mission to be as local as possible.
Good afternoon, everyone. Perhaps some of you in this room do not know that today's speaker is actually my sister-in-law. She's been my sister-in-law for over 14 years. And earlier this week, Chris Alexander, this guy right here, who knows my relationship to her, sent me a text and asked me if I would introduce her. And of course I said, sure. And then I received a response back from Chris. He says, quote, "Thanks, I'll get you her bio tomorrow." And I said, well, I know her pretty well. Nevertheless, I was told by Sarah to stick to the script. Not going to do that. But tell you a little bit about her. You know, before I do that, I want to say this. When I met her sister, started dating her sister, Sarah didn't speak to me for about 2 or 3 weeks. And later on, I asked her, well, why did you do that to me? She said, well, I was pretty well convinced you weren't going to stick around and I wasn't going to waste my time on you. But here we are, Sarah. All right. So here it is. Sarah's a Jackson native. Sarah Stone Smith is the managing director of Friends of Heart, a local nonprofit organization in West Tennessee promoting heart health and awareness. She brings years of experience in public relations, marketing, and brand development. As the co-founder and co-host of the nationally acclaimed Say It Southern podcast, she's built a thriving community that celebrates Southern women through storytelling, curated retreats, and signature products, including her own line of candles. There you go. As an active volunteer in the West Tennessee community, she has been an advocate and an avid fundraiser for organizations making impact in the area. Sarah is the mom of 3 girls, is involved in all the activities and that surround that most important role of mother. And so her daughters are Taylor May, who will almost be 16, Millie, who just turned 13, and the boss of the group, Stella, who's 8. They don't agree on much, but they agree that I am their favorite uncle. So with that, give a warm Rotary welcome to Sarah Stone Smith.
Thank you. That's nice. As Jody said, I am Sarah Smith, the managing director of Friends of Heart. Let me just switch. I'm going to put up our logo here. If I can get that going. There we go. All right. First, I want to just say it's a real honor to be speaking to your Rotary group today. Rotary is known for finding solutions, rolling up your sleeves, making communities better. So, as a nonprofit looking to raise awareness and money, you're my people. So glad to be here today. Before I get started, though, I do want to share something with you all that no one has seen publicly yet. I came on board in July at Friends of Heart and knew that we had big goals that we wanted to kick off in 2026, new managing director, and I felt like Friends of Heart just needed a new look altogether. So I'm going to show you guys our brand new logo that will be released or revealed. Here it is in the new year. So new look, new year, new Friends of Heart. Hope you love it. If you don't tell me. So as I said, came on board in July. I do not have a medical background. My background, as Jody said, is in marketing, PR, and business development. So I've been asked several times by people, so why come on board Friends of Heart? And the answer to that is very simple. I just started doing some research. I did some research on facts regarding cardiovascular disease in the United States, in Tennessee, and right here locally. And then also, being a Jackson native, I started to hear stories from people about their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers, stories where an AED helped save their life. And so all those stories weren't just headlines to me anymore. You know, they became personal. And so I just felt like it was something that I wanted to get involved in to help my community. I was actually just at a Tennessee game, watching a Tennessee game, with a friend of mine, and she said, "Sarah, I'm asking about Friends of Heart. How's it going?" And she said, "I'm not sure if you're even aware of this, but my nephew, when he was 15 years old, he was at Dyer County high school." And she said, the teacher noticed that he was slumped over in his seat, and about that time when she noticed, he collapsed onto the floor. She called for help, and the security guard was the first on the scene, and he came with his AED. He had just received and was trained on that AED 2 weeks prior to that. So that AED and that security guard saved his life. And so Friends of Heart's mission is to have more stories like that. We want those happy endings. So the problem, some of the statistics that I learned about. Heart disease. It's the leading cause of death in the United States for men and women across every racial and ethnic group. Every 33 seconds, someone dies from cardiovascular disease. And this number is astonishing. So in 2021, 695,000 people in the United States died from cardiovascular disease. That's one in five. New studies show that they just did in 2023 that number has increased. That number went from 1 in 5 deaths in the United States to 1 in 3. 1 in 3 deaths in the United States are from cardiovascular disease. And here in Jackson, survival rates for out-of-hospital sudden cardiac arrest are only about 6%. That's almost the same as it was 30 years ago here in Jackson. So even with all the new technology, the AEDs, awareness, smartphones, that number really hasn't gone down. So that's why Friends of Heart was founded back in 2017. The founders wanted to make sure that the people of Jackson and all West Tennessee surrounding counties had the very best in prevention, in education, and emergency response. They wanted to make sure that local dollars being raised were staying here local, doing local work. So that's a little bit about how it started. Part of what Friends of Heart is doing now. I like to kind of break it down into four different parts. It's the easiest way to explain it all, because there is so much that they're doing. The 4-Minute Community Initiative. A lot of people know this as the 4-Minute City. You may be familiar with that. It is now the 4-Minute Community because it's not just in the city limits. It's throughout Madison County. And it's called the 4-Minute Community because the first 4 minutes after a cardiac arrest are the most critical. We lose around 100 people every year in Jackson to sudden cardiac arrest. So by putting smart AEDs throughout the community and training the people how to use them, we're making sure that help is never more than 4 minutes away. And to date, Friends of Heart has deployed 200 of our 250 devices and built a care team. And that care team is made up of off-duty police officers, fire departments, teachers, just everyday citizens like you and I. Those citizens, we train them on how to respond. In fact, they actually have on their phones, if an EMS call goes in, they get notified if they are in that area, and they can choose to accept or decline that call to go take their AED and respond to that emergency. So here's the amazing part of this. 90% of the cardiac arrest calls in Jackson, one of our AEDs, our care team members, has been within 1 mile of the incident. Yeah, so good work going on there. The second part of Friends of Heart that I like to talk about is the AED grant program. So this kind of zooms out beyond Jackson and Madison County. This is going throughout West Tennessee. We have a way that is simple for facilities such as churches, community centers, different organizations to have an AED in their facility. So they make a $600 contribution, and Friends of Heart, we take care of the rest. We also will train you. You'll receive the AED, and we make sure that you're trained on it and that you know where it is and that it is working properly and all the good things. So over the last few years, Friends of Heart has placed over 200 AEDs, including the Humboldt Fire Department, Crockett County Sheriff Department, churches throughout West Tennessee, Henderson County, Dyer County. The new Heart and Vascular Tower at West Tennessee Healthcare received 9 AEDs, and we're also helping schools here. Last year, Tennessee made it mandatory for an AED to be at every high school athletic event with the Smart Heart Act, which is a great idea, right? Except that they didn't have the budget for that. So Friends of Heart is making sure that we can get those AEDs placed throughout the schools, throughout West Tennessee. And the act also mandates that the schools create and rehearse cardiac emergency response plans. So again, this is a place where Friends of Heart is helping. Now this next part of the Friends of Heart is one that is really, as a mother, 3 girls who are involved in all sorts of athletics. We travel throughout the West Tennessee, and beyond for competitive cheer, basketball, and soccer. So statistics show that 1 in 300 youth could be living with an undetected heart condition. 1 in 300. So it's not rare. So Friends of Heart is doing free youth EKG screenings in the high schools. This year alone, we've screened over 250 students across Madison and Haywood County and in Bradford. They've already found 15 abnormalities. That's 15 children who have been in danger during practice, game, or gym class, but instead they're getting treatment. And their families have a little bit of peace of mind knowing about this. So this program, the youth EKG screenings, I personally love this so much because I feel like this is something that's proactive. It's not waiting for a tragedy to happen. We're preventing tragedy before they do. We partner with Who We Play For, and they are the ones that help us provide these screenings. We also partner with Jackson LeBonner here to help when these children, if an abnormality is found, we get them in promptly and help them along the process with their doctor's visits. We also have Lambeth and Jackson State student nurses that help us do these screenings, and that is helping give them some hands-on experience too, so we're really proud of that. A lot of you probably heard many stories around here, like I said, being local to Jackson. Many of you are probably familiar with the story of the student, the Trinity athlete who, I believe it was last fall, maybe the fall before, who collapsed while running. And his teammate actually performed CPR on him and saved his life. So we want, at Friends of Heart, more people to both get screened and also to learn what to do in that sort of situation. There's another story that many of you may or may not be familiar with, the Chase Gardner story, and I actually want to play this video for you all. Let me see if I can get this going. It's the story of Chase Gardner.
So we were at a baseball camp for pitchers in Texas, about an hour north of Houston. My grandson was 16 years old at the time, picture of health, and all of a sudden there's a kid across the room that was sitting beside Chase going, "Hey, hey, hey." And I look over there and my grandson is face down in the turf. So I run over to him. He's completely out of it, and I start shaking him, yelling his name, and he's not responding.
Dad called, which I knew the phone call something must be going on because I knew they were right in the middle of their first pitching session of the day, and he said, "Anna, something has happened to Chase, and I need you to get down here. I need y'all need to come to Texas now." And then I heard the ambulance siren go off. We got to Houston, and Chase was intubated. He couldn't speak. He just, when he would try, of course, he couldn't make any noise. And seeing him look like that, I thought he was going to die.
And about 30, 40 minutes later, they come back in and said, "We're calling in an electrophysiologist." He shows up like about 11 o'clock Sunday morning, says, "I'm 99.9% sure and I know what this is." Normally with the youth, they find this issue out prior to going into cardiac arrest. On Monday, the test came back. He was good to do go through the procedure. He told us it would take about 2 to 6 hours. He went in and like 2.5 hours later, he came out and said that's exactly what it was. So he came out and said he's good to go, no restrictions other than taking an aspirin. And it was a miracle. I mean, you'll never convince me that, God didn't put us at that place where there was 2 parents that knew CPR, was able to perform it, that the ambulance was less than 5 to 10 minutes away from where he was at the facility at. And I would encourage all parents to spend the money if you don't have the money. Friends of Heart is offering this program for the 12 lead. You need to have your child checked out.
Kind of get a little shortness of breath or feel my heart start beating really fast. And that not only was like during a workout, but like also I could just be like laying in bed, watching my phone or something, and my heart would just start racing and notice that. But leading up to like the moments, I remember eating lunch right before it, and that was it. I don't remember anything. I don't remember like the past 15 minutes before it. Yeah, like my grandfather, he's my best friend. Love that man to death, and to see that he almost had to think that his grandson almost didn't make it before him. It's probably not a good feeling to have. So I'd say that's probably the worst, is just seeing my family and friends have to go through it. If you have any type of feeling, like symptom or something that scares you, that like, why does this happen? Like how like my heart would just race just laying there. Speak up about it. Don't just think it's something normal, because most of the time it's not.
I want to start by just throwing a lot of numbers at you. Sudden cardiac arrest is the #1 killer of student athletes, arguably of children across the whole U.S. About 1 in 300 kids have something wrong with them that could be potentially deadly from birth with a heart that they don't even know about. The most effective way to detect these is an EKG screening. They're going to detect about 95% of what could be wrong with the heart from an electrical standpoint. So that's why we're bringing this youth EKG screening program here. First of all, to Madison County, it's private, public, homeschool student athletes, band, and ROTC members. About 3% of those EKGs, when performed, are going to be something that doctors need to take a closer look at. And then from that 3%, only about 3 to 5% are going to need to have some sort of procedure or medication. So it's just that peace of mind that they can offer. I think that a story like Chase's helps bring that home. You know, we've got a local kid who plays ball, is engaged in our community, and we almost lost him for something that could have been easily discovered through an EKG. But those are not part of a state-mandated physical or wellness exam for kids. They're just not part of it. So that's why we want to offer this free. We're covering the cost. Let me kind of walk you through a day, what that would look like. We're going to come in, bring a team, EKG techs, EKG students maybe, be a real community effort. They're going to call the kids out of class. They're going to have the, 5-10 minute non-invasive tests done where we put the leads on them. We've got a team of local physicians who have volunteered to read those. And then the ones that pop up as abnormal, we're going to get them in with a pediatric cardiologist who specializes in hearts of youth. So we're going to partner with pediatric cardiologists who are going to get the kids in within a week or two if they need to. Like I said, it's going to be a very few of these that even need that. But if it's your child, that's your choice. That's going to be everything to you. We just want to get ahead with things and see what difference we can make here in West Tennessee for our student athletes.
Video never gets easier. So that brings me to the fourth part of Friends of Heart, what we do. Education and awareness. Bringing stories like this to you so that you know what we are doing and what we are, about us saving lives. And the education part, we work with first responders, teachers, parents, and everyday citizens, because the truth is you don't have to have a doctor to save a life. You just have to be willing to act and to know how. And that's one of my favorite things to remind people with the AEDs, is that they're not complicated. You don't need a medical degree. If you can use Siri on your phone, if you can use MapQuest or Waze to get to your dinner reservations, you can use an AED. It literally talks you through it. So that's our work at Friends of Heart. The AEDs, care teams, youth screening, and education. Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to what I said before, 1 in 3 deaths. So that's not just one person in this room, that's probably 2 people at your table, really. And that's when these stories are not just statistics. When you hear these local stories here, it's something that's personal to all of us here in Jackson and West Tennessee. And I know many of you have your own stories, maybe a parent, a spouse, a teammate, a neighbor, and we want those stories to not end in heartbreak. So we can't do it alone, Every AED, every screening, every training session, it all depends on donors, sponsors, and community partners. All of this takes funding, support, community involvement. Friends of Heart doesn't have a big national bank behind us supporting us and funding us. What we raise here in Jackson and West Tennessee stays here. And that's why I'm asking you all here today to be a part of Friends of Heart. Consider giving to Friends of Heart, whether it's financially, connecting us to a business or your organization, or simply by sharing what we do. That's the best thing you can do. So thank you for letting me share with you all today, Friends of Heart and our mission and what we do. Thank you all.
This program you've been watching was made possible through the generous financial support of West Tennessee PBS viewers like you. Please visit westtnpbs.org and make a donation today so that we can continue to make local programs like this possible. Thank you.
It's all about home.